It is this madness, not reason, which fascinates men. It's inaccessible truth, connected to deep, dark places. No other figure typifies such dark stalking of insight as the animal. He writes, quote, "The animal that haunts his nightmares and his nights of privation is his own nature, which will lay bare hell's pitiless truth, the vain images of blind idiocy. Such are the world's magna scientia." What he means is the scientists are really the ones who are most dumb and stupid and domesticated. Already, in this disorder, in this mad universe, is prefigured what will be the cruelty of finale. The Renaissance has expressed what is apprehended, the threats and secrets of the world, end quote. But at the same time, he's going to trace that there is this positive role of animals, there is occurring at the same period a switch. Instead of looking at madness positively as a source of illumination, madness now becomes, according to Erasmus's account, a form of folly. And folly is actually going to become, rather than a place of dark knowledge, the highest strait, or sort of the new replacement of Adam's original sin. Instead of pride, the new sign of human weakness will become folly. At the end of this classic age, madness then will be divested of all its spiritual and pedagogical values, and the mad as well as the animal are portrayed as, quote, social menaces. The iconography parallels this shift. The Antichrist will represent false knowledge, and the virgin must keep the dragon beast at bay. Ultimately, all wisdom connected with the animal will be annihilated. Eventually, madmen will become the face of the beast. The mad will be chained, leashed, shackled, and Nathaniel Tukes report on the condition of indigenous insane states. One man at the Bethlehem was found in such a condition, caged for 12 years. The ethos is wholly one with neither a desire to punish nor a duty to correct. His description is worth quoting him at length. And here's what Foucault writes. There was a certain animality that haunted the hospitals of the period. Those chained to the cell walls were no longer men whose minds had wandered, but beasts preyed upon by a natural frenzy, as if madness, at the extreme point, freed from the moral unreason in which its most attuned forms are enclosed, managed to rejoin, by a paroxysm of strength, the immediate violence of animality. This model of animality prevailed in the asylums and gave their cage-like aspect, their look of the menagerie. Foucault goes on at length to describe this dehumanization of the mad and their equation to the beast, which results in their beating, their cagement, and the more that the mad actually have the ability to withstand cold temperatures and beatings. For one man, for example, they're often portrayed naked, needing very little clothing, able to survive in 12-degree temperatures. Their survival, their ability to actually persist in these environments, caused them to think all the more that they were animals, and that animals now were forms of truth. This is this madness that you are truth, but truth with no content, truth with nothing to give us. So the feminist body and the animal body. What Foucault's analysis offers is the complex project of the deconstruction, the Heideggerian against the Cartesian project of metaphysics. It is a destruction, rupture of the blind loyalty philosophical traditions give reason, a reason that is unnaturally and mechanically apart from the world and the question of being. It is a fear of the knowledge animals possess and how they may challenge the limits of man's rationality, his control, and his power. Feminist philosopher Luce Irigaray has worked within the Heideggerian legacy to reveal how feminists can appropriate this deconstruction of Cartesian metaphysics. But like Foucault, she is also drawn to the hysterics of women, or their abject identities embodied as a latent site of power and knowledge. As a psychoanalyst, she also applies her trade against Sigmund Freud and Jacques Lacan, arguing women within the Freudian Cartesian tradition exist only as a necessary dumping ground for male identity. As Julia Kristeva describes, woman is abject. Her body is a site of horror, menstrual blood, mucus, milk, hysteria, and darkness, a vaginal abyss. The opposite of the unified, rational, enlightened male. There is no positive place for difference. Difference is only the negative or the negation of the positive male ideal, his rationality, his disembodied mind, his unified soul, his absolute God. Within such thinking, women and by extension animals cannot exist positively, only in the necessary negative of male thinking and identity. Jacques Lacan famously asserted that there is no positive identity for women since there is, quote, nothing outside the phallus, and all that male sexuality signifies. Irigaray's counterproject has been to insist that a positive understanding of female identity, body, and relations can exist, and does subsist, in the very location or abjection that man leaves behind. Nature, the invisible, the diffuse, the voluminous, and amorphous. What appears as nothing or no thing is actually where true female subjectivity can persist and subsist below the visible, a truth or knowledge without phallic recognition or language. But rather than essentialize what this speaking subject woman is or ought to be, she instead argues an alternative political trajectory, to redeploy the feminine and thus, quote, jam the machinery of patriarchy, end quote. Through a technique she calls mimesis, or mimetically copying or parroting philosophy in order to disrupt, assuage, and reveal what it has hidden or buried, namely, the bodies of those it has sacrificed in its own dialectic, women, nature, and in a surprising late essay, also the animal. In her later work, Irigaray devotes more of her writing toward ways she can think and cultivate the difference ethically and spiritually for a new kind of intersubjectivity. And what I want to just quickly scan here is that her idea in this is to note difference not within the idea of patriarchy as the negative of the male identity. And this is a philosophy that she calls saming or sameness. Every time that we try to create rights that are equal to a man, that we try to gain Marxist control that is equal to the wage of the bourgeoisie, then we are in the process of saming. But if we want to do a different kind of trajectory, then we take difference and we make much of it by redeploying it. Part of her movement for a positive project in this direction has been to look at the invisible or the material elements, Empedocles' quadrat, so water, earth, fire, and air. Specifically, she's looked at the two, water and air, because they are the most invisible. Air becomes the exemplar for the kinds of relationships or the ways that we can rethink, constituting subjectivity apart from the male exemplar. So, a respiratory relationship is a rhythmic relationship that corresponds to the universe, and hence has a spiritual or infinite dimension. I add the respiratory relationship becomes a powerful element for Irigaray's critique of Western metaphysics and Western religion, in that air is resistant to the ocular gaze. It is a permeable excess that is transformable but cannot be statically seized and placed. It is expansive. Moreover, as the body engages with the breath, it must depend upon its availability, but no body can claim it as its own. The property of air has its own boundaries and therefore can be shared. It resists the seizure of the it is, or the definition, since its components, nitrogen, oxygen, water, vapor, and trace gases, can vary, and pollutants can alter its quality and its purposes. Even more interestingly, the origin of one of its primary gases, oxygen, is a mystery, given the huge amount of oxygen in the atmosphere that vegetation now subtends. Air can be one thing in mainland China and another in America, and while its elements are similarly constituted, its quality, availability, and purity vary in relation to consumerism, chemical alchemy, and other natural elements. Air is the otherness that is naturally vital, but hidden, revealed in the life it gives, but observable in its felt effects. One can say what it is, nitrogen, oxygen, and other gases, but it cannot say what this air is right now, for all ages, for all time. The very inhabitants of the place of air change the air, as do the natural elements. We cannot say precisely where the elements of air came from, but know what it needs to become air and what other factors must be present for it. So how this works in relationship to the animal is that woman, she argues, will then become the exemplar or a spiritual guide to this new kind of relation based on breathing well, or what we call sort of a life-giving exchange